Hello. It's been a long time. I know. I'm so sorry. I have no excuses except I prioritize living over making videos. But having said that, I'm absolutely 100% committed to giving you a video every week. I don't know what they're going to be. I don't pre-plan them. I just think of things on a whim that I think you might be interested in. My name's Shell, for those of you who don't know me. I've been sewing since I was a little girl, doing all sorts of handcrafts. When you grow up in a family where you kind of have to make things if you want them, because you can't always go out and buy them, you learn how to do everything for yourself. So today, I want to explain my organization of fabrics and things. It may sound boring, but there are some tricks that I've learned along the way to keep things low cost, as well as make sure that I don't run out and buy something that I already have, which does occasionally happen. But having said that, let's see what we've got going on here. I work out of my bedroom. It is what it is. If I had my druthers, I would move everything out into our living room and have that as the studio space. But I also share that space, so it's not something I can readily do. I use these tubs to organize most of my small fabrics. I have white tubs that you can see over here on the far side. These are crates that I use to store larger pieces of fabric, usually something between 2 yards to 5 yards. I usually get things that are in the 3 to 5 yards range, especially if I think I want to use it for a quilt backing. But I also have small bits of fabric. So for example, I have a whole set of tubs here that are dedicated to quilting. These are either pieces of fabric that I've dedicated to using for a quilt or quilts, or they are jelly rolls. I'll get into a little detail on that in a minute. And then I have some tubs that are fabric scraps and fat quarters. They may not necessarily be used for a quilt. They could be used for a variety of things, but they're smaller pieces. And I also have a tub that is just seam binding. It's either seam binding that I've purchased or that I've made out of fabric as I have done, you know, quilt backing or things like that. And then I have just some various things like odd fasteners and weird thread that I probably will only use for one time and never use it again, but I don't throw things away. I have thread and cardstock. These are large cones of thread and cardstock that I use for templates. I have buttons that I have organized. Again, I'll show you a little more. I've got a bunch of cone threads and larger spools of thread, zippers, and straps. I want to really show you those straps, so I'll show you those in a minute. Let me show you some of the quilt sets I'm talking about. So for example, this tub here, I marked a quilt set. These are actually scraps that I have gone ahead and quilted together, pieced together, I should say, because maybe I'll use them in a bag, something small, but they're something I do when I have no creativity left in me. And these are pieces of, you may recognize them from some of the quilts I've actually made. These are pieces of jelly roll that I have put together into 4 square patches. And then I have underneath just much smaller bits that I may or may not use for anything, but we'll see. And then leftover pieces of the jelly roll. And these are already pieced together by colors that I had intended to use for something and then didn't get to. So I've left all of these very colorful rainbow bits together so that I can use them in a project. Probably will make a small quilt out of most of it, and the small bits I can probably incorporate into a bag of some sort. So that's one of those things there. Now for actual quilt sets that I've purposely put together, I got some novelty fabric. These are fabrics that have like little kitties and little sailor motif, little bears, just some very, I think, feel like old-fashioned, along with this trippin' they're like swords, but I think they're actually lightsabers. So if you know anything about what I do to earn money during the day outside of sewing, I make my magic in a galaxy far, far away. I'll just leave it at that. So those are something that I can put together in an actual novelty quilt, but I haven't really found the best pattern or use for it. Now, I just finished a purple and white postage stamp quilt. That was, I won't call it a labor of love. It was a pain in the butt, but I always wanted to do a postage stamp quilt. So I kept what I had left over, the whites and then part of the backing, as well as the fabric that I actually cut to create strips. And then I had jelly roll that I had used for part of it, batik jelly roll. So I kept that all together because I can make a whole nother quilt. Not a postage stamp quilt. I'll probably do a quilt as you go, which is something I'm going to show you how I do at some point. I also have some other novelty fabric, some frogs, and I wish my mother-in-law was still alive. She loved frogs. I would happily made her a frog quilt, and then some bees. So I think those will probably go together in some kind of a quilt. So you see, I go ahead and I put things together in a way that I think will be attractive. And then the other thing that I do is when I get a jelly roll, I go ahead and take it apart and put the pieces back together in what I consider to be interesting color sets. So I got a jelly roll that had a lot of very shiny bits to it. So I separated those all out. So I have them all separated into 2 to 4 strips. And then I have some leftover batik that I did the same thing to. These are oranges, reds, and purples. So I separate them out. That way, if I want to make just one quilt of one color, I can put things together. I also found this really cool mermaid fabric. It's enough for a small quilt backing. I thought that was nice. So I picked these things up as I think about it. One thing I was going to show you, if I can find this quickly. Oh, this is what I wanted to show you. So when I get a jelly roll, like I said, I separate them out. So you can kind of tell that I've taken some of the strips and I've pulled apart ones that I think go really nicely together. And I've kept those together. So I can just grab those. I know the colors work well, and I can just grab those if I want blues or greens or reds. I already have them separated out so that they can be used in a nice quilt. All right, so that's that. Now, let me show you a couple other things of how I take things apart. Now, I do, like I said, I have seam binding. This looks like a mess, but it's not. You can see from the side I have package seam binding in here, and then on the top I have bits. These are strips that were cut from fabric. I have some jelly roll here that I just don't think would work well in a full quilt, but maybe as edging, binding. So I have these in here, and I can pick through and I can find something that might work for an edge, or if I'm binding the inside or the outside of a bag, whatever I need it for. And I can also make my own seam binding if I want to. I don't get too crazy about that. I have quilt scraps and fat quarters. I do keep them in color groups. I have a whole set of rainbow fabric. I will show you. A long time ago, I had when I was starting to do gradient quilts, the first fabrics I got, I made a gradient quilt, which is actually on my Mercari site. for sale. I've made a few of those, but that's my latest. So then, when John Fabric RIP was closing, I thought little by little I want to get some things to set aside. So I picked up a bunch of rainbow patterned fabrics, 3 to 5 yards of what I ever could get. Oh, I wish I had gotten more of this kitty cat print. That was so fun. And then some fat quarters. So I've got a variety of fat quarters, and then some pieces of yardage. So I picked up as much of those as I could, and I keep those in this rainbow box, marked rainbow fabric, so that I can make another gradient quilt at some point, or I can just use some of it for quilt backing. I think the kitty cat fabric would be great for quilt backing. Like I said, I've just got an odds and ends box. I just had some of this stuff for a long time. I should throw it away. I've got some elastic thread, some jeans gold thread, or whatever, the tobacco I think it's called. I've got metallic thread. I don't know why my knitting pins are in here, but they're in here. Some metallic ribbon. I have no idea what I was going to use that for. And some embroidery floss. So just weird stuff. Probably should give it away, something, but I probably won't. The buttons, I wanted to show you the buttons. I have my extra string that I used to tie that postage stamp quilt with, but I have buttons, and I keep them in these little tubs. These are condiment containers that you get with delivery sometimes, and they make great little containers for notions. So I've divided them into colors. I've got some pink coral, I've got greens and whites, you can see, and then I have novelty buttons. These are there's some tropical, like there's a palm tree and a bunch of things in there that I could use, some Mickey Mouse related ones. I've got some giant buttons. They're all the same shape but different colors. And then I have another set of kind of variety or novelty buttons that are just like pastel color. So I keep those. These little flowers are cute. They have a little face on them. So I don't know what I'll use those for. I don't tend to make things that actually have working buttonholes. I don't like the buttonholers that come with the new machines. I don't like it. I like the old-fashioned buttonhole that my mom had on her old Singer machine. So I will make buttonholes by hand using zigzag stitch and some bar tacking. It's not that hard, but I just don't do it that often. So here's a box where I keep some of the cones of variety thread. I like to use variegated thread when I'm doing a quilt top, when I'm actually quilting it. I think it looks kind of nice. But I picked up some different colors when they were on sale. Do I have a specific purpose? No, but you saw a bunch of purple that I had, so that'll work out. And then this is kind of a crazy idea. I picked up on clearance some large, thick ribbon, and I think I could actually use this for seam binding on a quilt. I don't know, why not? You know, little sloths. I don't know, could work. Some watermelons. I don't know. It didn't cost me very much money, and if I can't use it for seam binding, I'm sure I can actually use it for, I don't know, I can make hair doodads for somebody. I've got a box of zippers. I don't do a lot of zippers, but when I do, I want to have them. I purchased a couple of boxes from Madame Sew, 44 pieces. These were multicolored. They've come in handy. They're only 8-inch, but there's a bunch of colors. These have come in so handy. I might, in my next video, show you some of the bags I have available on my Mercari site, where I have actually used 8-inch zippers for the top of a bag, 2 8-inch zippers like this, instead of getting zipper tape and putting 2 different pulls. Why go out and buy zipper tape when I have 8-inch zippers and it works perfectly fine? And then I just put little charms on the end of the zipper pull just to give them a little bit more of a handle. Yeah, it works out fine. Straps. Now this is what I really want to show you. Something that is really important to me is make, do, and mend and use what you have. I do buy things, I get it, I buy new fabric, but most of the fabric I use is dead stock, or it is thrifted. In England you call it charity shops, here we call them thrift shops. It can be fabric that people decided they weren't going to use. I use tablecloths, napkins, all sorts of things that are 100% cotton or linen. I try to avoid polyester because I just like things to be as natural as possible. So this box of straps is going to look crazy, and I'll explain to you what they are. So when I get a tablecloth or napkins that have a hem all around, you know how they have a hem all around? I slice off the hem. So this is the hem from some napkins. This is the hem from some curtains I got, I think, at Cost Plus Imports. Let's see. Oh, I just have a bunch of stuff. And then I have, this is the top of a set of curtains. And I've used all this fabric. All of this fabric I've used for bags. And then this is the hem from that set of curtains. These, let me tell you what I use these for. If you're making anything with a drawstring, you know where I'm going with this, you can painstakingly make the strap. I mean, you can use seam binding and just sew the edge together. You can cut it and fold it and iron it and sew it together. Just trim as close to the folded sewn edge as you can. Get that rough edge off and use that as your drawstring. It saves so much time. It's rustic. Yes, you might get some strings falling off. You could actually go over the edge with a zigzag stitch if you want to, but it's just so easy, and it's colorful, and it might be an offset color combination to the bag you're making, but it's a great way to reuse something that would probably have just gone into the trash. You can also make cat toys. I've taken a long hem, and then I've taken the selvage off of fabric, and I've sewn it together so it's stringy, and oh, cats love to play with that. I do make sure that it's put away in a safe space after playing, because I never want the cat to get it wrapped around their neck. Well, that's enough for now. That is a little bit of my organization in these tubs. I get these really cheap at outlets. I try to avoid the big box stores anymore unless, you know, they follow my political beliefs. That's just the way I am. I'm not going to spend my money in a place where I know they're not doing what I think is right for people. That's my choice. I vote with my wallet all year round, and then every 2 to 4 years, I vote with my constitutional right to do so. I encourage you to do that as well. I think most of the time when people buy things from big box stores, they just haven't taken the time to look around in their local community or online to see if they can get it directly from the manufacturer. Just like airline tickets that I can get cheaper from the airline instead of going through an app or a travel agent, you can oftentimes get things from the manufacturer directly. And even though you may pay a little bit more to buy something locally, at the end of the day, if you're scrimping and saving, because believe me, I know, I grew up that way and I've lived most of my life that way, you've got to give somewhere, right? So sometimes I have to buy it in a certain spot because I just can't avoid it, but I do that as little as possible. Have an awesome rest of your week. I look forward to seeing you again next week, and I hope that some of this information was helpful to you as you set up your space, no matter what crafting you're doing. Stay organized. When you finish a project, clean up, clean your equipment, put it away, go through and maybe reorganize some of your supplies so that the next time you know exactly where everything is. Have a great week, everybody, and I hope to see you soon.